Russell Ramsey, alumnus and chair emeritus of the GW Board of Trustees, right up here, to a trustee and alumna Cynthia Steele Vance, Cynthia, and also to Diane Robinson Knapp, chair of the university's Urban Food Task Force, to Lynn Goldman, who's the dean of our School of Public Health and Health Services, and to the faculty and students who have joined us here this afternoon. And all of today's program participants, including our distinguished speaker, MSNBC Morning Joe co-host Mika Brzezinski, from whom you're going to be hearing just shortly, are, I think, going to be bringing you a terrific program this afternoon on a very important issue. The issue of eating disorders is highly relevant to our university's focus on health, and particularly on the interaction of health and food. A growing number of our courses across the university approach that intersection in multidisciplinary ways. Several years ago, we launched the Urban Food Task Force, which has developed a number of initiatives, including what we call the Integrated Food Project, which incorporates food-related examples into the high school curriculum. We also have a course that's running right now. It's one of the most popular courses on campus under the leadership of Chef Jose Andres. It's called The World on a Plate, and it examines the science of food and nutrition in the context of a broad examination of the role of food in history, culture, and industry. Under the direction of Vice President for Research Leo Chalupa, our faculty are also exploring the possibility of establishing a food institute. And a lot of these initiatives come together under the umbrella of the university's very broad interest in sustainability and everything that means in terms of healthy living, healthy communities. And I did want to mention, and it's a way it's kind of a coincidence, because we did a national search for the founding director of a sustainability institute, and we happened to end up at the end of that search with a person with a very keen interest in a great deal of expertise on the kinds of issues that we're talking about today, and particularly on food issues, and that is Kathleen Merrigan, whose previous position was Deputy Secretary for Agriculture in the Obama administration. She spent 4 years in that role, and I think she's going to be a great leader of our efforts when she arrives here just next month, when she's joining our faculty and leading our institute. Today, of course, we're particularly honored to host Mika Brzezinski, and to do so during National Eating Disorders Awareness Week. Ms. Brzezinski has drawn on her personal experience to stimulate a national dialogue on food issues. In fact, has become one of the, if not the key spokespersons on that very important issue of eating disorders, and we're looking forward to hearing her reflections on this critical public health challenge. And to bring her to the stage, it's now my pleasure to turn the program over to the Chair Emeritus of the George Washington University, Russ Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is indeed an honor to be here today, to have an opportunity not only to introduce one of the truly the heroes in this movement in not just the United States, but as far as I can tell in the world today. But it's really an honor to have an opportunity to really share a few sort of thoughts and ideas, not for just those in the audience today, but really for anyone who has ever thought of themselves having a complicated relationship with food. You know, today I really think it's a historic day, at least in my judgment, because you know, my first sort of knowledge or awareness of eating disorders started 8 years ago, when as a father of 4 children and, you know, an oldest daughter who I thought was an active, vibrant 13-year-old, you know, I found very quickly in what I otherwise thought was a really normal summer, you know, that what was a sort of modest weight loss for our family has turned into really 8 years of just incredible turmoil and challenges. And as my wife Norma and I have really searched the world looking for solutions to try to help our daughter really deal with what seemed like such simple, easy issues, and to watch her struggle in the most, you know, incredible desire to just try to be healthy. You know, it's a journey which I know many of you have been touched by. I know many of you have lived it yourself, and you've probably lived it with others, and more than likely you've actually tried to not live it so that others would be aware of it, because you always felt like, well, geez, I can do this myself. You know, this is really not that complicated. I shouldn't really have my, insides being turned upside down because of just this silly challenge with food. And so today, I really hope this is the beginning of a call to action, so that when we really look at the numbers and as a, as an observer of things that are important in society, I don't think it is at all a overstatement to say that this issue of obsession with food and healthy relationship is really an issue of national strategic importance. Why? Well, there's a whole lot of reasons why. I mean, today we're going to talk on topics ranging from obesity, where, the best numbers say 2/3 of the people in this country are overweight. Others numbers, according to the Milken Institute, suggest that obesity, is $1 trillion economic issue in this country with all the effects associated with it. So it is a big sort of economic issue. Today, the topic's going to range from issues of anorexia and things like bulimia, and the statistics and the information that's put out today suggests that, most eating disorders start before age of 25, but that even today, 25% of college-age students, mostly women, are for the first time dealing with very severe issues of anorexia and bulimia, and the more sort of faster-growing illnesses like binge eating disorder and exercise-induced anorexia. And so the point of all this is that it is really important and it affects everyone. And in my judgment, the rate of growth and the speed is something that we can all do something about with awareness, with a conversation, and with just really the beginning of understanding that people are not alone. And so today, it is really an honor and a privilege to introduce to you Mika Brzezinski, who, when this book first came out, I read it cover to cover. And this is just not me sucking up to Mika here when I say that this is a must-read, not just for you, but for everyone. Because what you're going to learn in this book is that we really are at the beginning of possibilities, that you aren't alone, as Mika will share with you in her own very personal way, which I can almost assure you was much more difficult than interviewing Arafat or Russell Simmons or anybody in between. It is a much more difficult decision for her. But in this book, you will read that there are possibilities, and that people from Charles Barkley to Senator McCaskill, to Senator Hillenbrand, to people that you've never heard of, like the mayor of Oklahoma City, where, to his shock and horror, he realized that they were voted the most unfit city in the country, and he took it upon himself to go on a cascade to improve the health and the lives of his population by being a leader in this subject. So. Most of you know Mika by virtue of the amazing show that she has co-founded called Morning Joe, and most of you, I'm sure, if not every morning, you have great stories from watching this show. The only thing I'll say to you, in addition to all the other things that you probably already know, is that in thinking about this topic, I was trying to find something a little humorous, because let's face it, this is a very important subject, and so. I went to the source, which I thought is always the best, which is to go to either mother, father, or sibling. And as it turns out, I went to her brother, Mark, who happens to be our current ambassador to Sweden. And unfortunately, all that Mark could do was wax truly admiringly about his baby sister, who not only he believes is more accomplished than he is certainly a better book author than he is, who he really looks up to in so many ways, but in his own words said, listen, you have to understand, Mika is, on one hand, empathetic and does things for other women that really should be more of a model for society. But at the same time, she's gutsy, she's tough. She was fired when she was 40 by CBS and had to start at the bottom at MSNBC, literally the bottom. Point of that is you make lemons, you make lemonade out of lemons. You challenge your worst fears, and you can always overcome them. And so that it's my pleasure to introduce Mika Brzezinski.
Thank you very much. Okay. I can't believe my brother didn't tell you about the time he arrested me when he wanted to be a Border Patrol cop. or when he was arrested. But well, that's another story for the ambassador of Sweden. Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here, and my deepest gratitude to everyone at the George Washington University School of Public Health, President Knapp, Russ. My brother could have given you some good stuff, man. What's going on? Being a part of the administration, all of a sudden you say nothing. But I do agree. This is a topic that is hard to embrace. It's multifaceted, and I think we're at a critical time for our nation's public health as it pertains to the food we eat, to our diets, and to our relationship with food. And if you are going to be on the front lines of this, you're going to have to understand every facet of the problems that we're facing. It's not just an obesity crisis. It's not just a food crisis in terms of the mass production of food. Most of the food that we buy isn't very good for us. I mean, that's where we're at this point. It's kind of frightening when you really learn about these things. Generations now of addiction to salt, sugar, and fat. We are just born into it and don't even know how to find food without it. And also the brain's relationship with food that can trigger the road to severe obesity or severe eating disorders, and how all of these components fit into our healthcare crisis. So let's talk. I plan to really talk here today, and I wonder if you can. I'm just wondering how many here suffer from a bad relationship with food, perhaps an eating disorder that either leads to a form of anorexia or bulimia or obesity. Anybody want to raise their hand? After you hear my story, you might find that there are more of you than raise their hand, but that's about a third of the audience. Also, since we're streaming online, tweet me at Morning Mika if I say anything that connects, and we'll expand the conversation out over the coming days, and we'll have all the hashtags going and everything. So for about 30 years, I have had several different eating disorders that have sort of wound their way throughout my life, from anorexia to bulimia to the exercise eating disorder, and to another one that I discovered recently, which I'll tell you about in a moment. And I decided about 2 years ago to write it all down, to write everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and some of it kind of hysterical too, because of the weird things you do when your relationship with food is messed up. It was the most frightening thing I've ever done. It was really like my last secret. You know how you feel like you're just sort of weighed down by your secrets and you're putting on a front? This was a big one, and it was much worse than I thought, because I was trying to make it all look so easy. That's what we women are supposed to do, we feel. Be skinny and make it look easy. It was also the healthiest thing I've ever done, because it really forced me. I did what I had to do. I called myself out. It was very public. And it was liberating, because what I did find is that I was tired. So tired of being hungry all the time. So tired of feeling bad about myself all the time. So tired of eating a lot and then feeling bad about it, then being hungry and then feeling bad about exercising too much and then trying to look like nothing's wrong. It takes a toll. It really takes a toll, and it impacts your sense of value of yourself. If you don't value yourself, you really can't be valued at work, and you certainly can't be valued in your relationships. So it does affect your life. You can't live with this. You have to fix it. It doesn't go well if you don't. My reality from a very young age, it started when I was 15, as I was running like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 miles a day by the time I got to college. I would gorge, and then I would starve. I remember going to McDonald's all the time. It was right when the Big Macs came out. Do you guys ever taste one of those things? I haven't had one in 20 years. But when I used to eat them all the time, I got my license and I went to Madeira, and I would stop at 7-Eleven on Spring Hill Road on my way to school, and I would get pizza in a pocket, and I would eat 2. along with the guys who are going to do construction work buying their lunch. I'd buy the pizza in a pocket and eat it in the car while driving with pizza in a pocket all over the steering wheel. Then I would drive to McDonald's in McLean, and I would think all day, that would be after school, all day, I would think about that lunch, that Big Mac, and that large fries. And I would actually get 2 large fries and 2 Big Macs. And my brain would not rest. It just wouldn't rest until I was biting into that first Big Mac and all that other food was in front of me. That's when I felt peace. And it went into college where I was just such a mess. I went to Georgetown for 2 years, and then I transferred to Williams. And on the outside, I was, well, I was about to say I was a really successful academic, but I wasn't. So I don't have that storyline. That's for your daughter. But I was a good kid and a track athlete, and I loved the country, which is why I ended up transferring to Williams, but it was such a mess. Like Georgetown, all I remember is New North Dorm, diet pills, running, and Domino's Pizza. And I would eat the Domino's Pizza, the entire large, on the lower bunk of my bunk bed with a blanket, like as a curtain, alone. And then I would run it off and take diet pills and not eat it for a week. So the addiction to these foods developed very early. When I was at Williams, it was Price Chopper. Everybody else would go out on Saturday night and go to parties and stuff and, drink or whatever they do. And I would drive to North Adams, Massachusetts, and I would go to Price Chopper. And I would roam the aisles with a cart. And I would fill it up with Entenmann cookies, the best, newest ice creams, Captain Crunch, Crunch berries. I ate only the berries, so I'd get 3 boxes. And just weird and really extreme and lonely and so unhealthy. My teeth were terrible. I got 13 fillings in one sitting once. My hair was really thin. My skin was bad, but I was really skinny. But I sort of wasn't because I was kind of bloated too, because that's what happens. When you become anorexic, you have like this moment where you lose some weight and you look really good, but then the rest is bad. That only lasts a few weeks, but then you think you still need to do more to get back to that really good. It never happens because you're not healthy anymore. That was just that little moment in time where you've lost a little weight. Then it starts getting out of control. In my early 20s, I got married when I was 26, and I remember my husband, when we were dating, like our first kind of real date where it was official, he wanted to date me. We had gone running a few times. He brought over a huge box of Crunch Berries and milk because I had talked about how much I loved Crunch Berries. And I ate the whole box in front of him. And that's where I got the nickname Jethro, because he's like, "You're like Jethro." I don't know who Jethro is, but he ate a lot, like in a big bowl or something. Beverly Hillbillies. Great. Okay, so then I was starting out in TV, and when I was starting in local news, this is where sort of society and work began to influence the brain in a bad way, because all the girls that got promoted were beauty queens, and they were so skinny. And they seemed to be just skinny. But I would get up, run 12 miles, and do all this stuff, and hold my stomach in, and be starving to look like the beauty queens, and do all this stuff to my hair. And I wanted to be pretty like them so badly, and I just never was going to be a beauty queen. It's not my style, which I figured that out at this point. But they were all getting promoted. And they didn't really have talent. They were beauty queens. And that was sort of confusing. That's not the root of the problem. The root of the problem was in here. And the sort of exhaustion, really, when I look back at pictures of myself starting out in television, I look exhausted because I'm so hungry or I'm so tired and my hair is horrible, not because the style is out of date, but because it's like thin and not nourished. And you can tell that I feel bad about myself in these pictures, which is, if you want to be a beauty queen or you just want to be beautiful, just smile and stand up straight. You'll look beautiful. And it really, if you look in the mirror and try that, it's amazing. If you really feel it, you just find yourself when you do that, and you find your best side. And instead, I was so busy looking at what I didn't have and what I wasn't or what I didn't feel I had inside. And I was uncomfortable in my own skin. The pressure was there, and it fed into my disorders, my disordered behavior. I will be honest, it went on into the big time when I was working at NBC, actually at CBS. I had and the eating disorder sort of came and went. I would be a little bit better, and then I would fall back. I had a child, and I did pretty well during my pregnancy. But afterwards, I was a little heavy. It's like a size 8, which isn't that heavy. So I just did it. And I remember going to interview at NBC, and I was working overnight, so I was tired, and I was a little bit, postpartum physically, and I was trying to go running every day and be with a newborn and do this show on the overnights. And I went over there, and she said, listen, I'm sure you're very talented. I love your family background. Your education is great. Your experience is great. But you look terrible. You need to lose some weight, drink a little water, and come back to me in 6 months. And I did, and it worked. I actually sent her a picture of myself. I really worked hard on everything she said, and I lost weight and fixed myself up as best I could, and she brought me in for an audition, and I got a job. So that's like a pretty clear message, that there are certain things that you need to look like or feel you need to look like that may not just be in your head, that are a part of reality. And the question is, how much are you going to succumb to that reality? I succumbed too much. I started to really think about this because early days of Morning Joe, I started having to get up at 3 in the morning again to go to work. And so I would try anything to sleep, including Ambien. Yeah, you ever taken an Ambien? Anyone here? Okay, thank God, because I did this once and nobody raised their hand. They all looked at me like I was, and on TV. The entire panel said, no, we've never done that. And I'm like, I have. I took one, and it's like a truth serum. I'll never take it again. I really actually think Ambien's going to be a big story. It is already with this trial in New York, but big, as in it causes the brain to do terrible things. But I walked downstairs on Ambien. I don't remember this. Walked right past my husband in the kitchen, got the gallon of Nutella, and I started eating it with a spoon. And he was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm so hungry. And I'm eating it, and it's not enough. I put the spoon down. I start eating it with my hand, and it's all over my wrist, and I'm just eating Nutella like crazy, an unbelievable amount. And I went to bed, and I woke up covered with Nutella to go to work. I'm like, what is going on here? And my husband told me, I went home that day after I went to work, cleaned up, went to work, did the show, came home, and he's like, Nutella? And I'm like, what? He goes, wow, you got a problem. My co-host, Joe Scarborough, he always was like, and I was really fighting to stay at about 118 pounds. He's like, you're a rabbit, you don't eat. You just don't want to eat. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I like eating. I just kind of have a problem. And he's like, no, you don't. You don't eat. You're just one of those people. And, all of our wives hate you because you're just so skinny and you don't eat and you're not hungry. And I'm like, no, it really is. I'm trying to be honest here. It's really kind of hard, actually. And that was part of the lie, making it look so easy, being skinny and having that belt that cinches so tight on TV and it all looks so good and everyone tells you it looks so great and they throw clothes at you and they want to give you things. And it all sort of backs up this sickness. And Joe learned in 2 occasions, we call it going all Orange County and the Texas night. In Orange County, California, we had flown to California, done the show in the middle of the night, driven to Orange County, and did a luncheon on stage talking to a whole bunch of, I think, Comcast people about the show. And I don't think I'd eaten. And I was so tired. And we sat down, and they gave us breaded chicken, something on the side, chocolate cake, and some weird fries. And Joe looked away and talked to somebody for 30 seconds and looked back, and my plate was clean. And I was like licking the plate. And he's like, what the heck? I said, I told you I like to, and I can't stop now. Give me your chicken. And I mean, it was the worst lunch, those disgusting mass-produced lunches that are supposed to look elegant. They're just covered with butter, and I was going crazy. So he was like, oh my God. So we call it don't you go all Orange County on me now, give me the food back. And the other thing was we went to do Bob Schieffer's symposium in Texas, and it was a really late night, another time zone thing, and I hadn't eaten all day, and they gave us a big bag of Mexican food to give for the whole staff in the car. And they could hear like and things ripping in the back. I had it all over me. I totally went crazy, and I ate like enough food for 4 people. It's funny, but it's not when you really think about it. It's frightening. And it was all the salt. And what was so interesting to me is I really started to study after those 2 events, because I was beginning to become more open about it, how I felt when I lost control. And we started debating it on the show, food addiction, and whether or not, soda is just like poison, really. I mean, why would you buy a 12-pack of orange soda and feed it to your children? Like, there is nothing good about that. I would argue it's really bad to do that, because those are the things that made my taste buds crave more. And none of it was actually hurting my body. And I studied how I felt when I lost control. And I really felt there was a response going on in my brain and something happening in my body when I would do this. It would feel not only really good and really peaceful, as I mentioned when I was 15, but I could feel a physiological reaction. And I just knew deep inside it wasn't just my lack of discipline, as my mother would say. I knew there was something more. And I really do believe science right now is proving that I'm correct and will prove that I'm correct. And you'll see it in lawsuits. You'll see it in slow but important changes that the food industry is making. And you'll see it in books like Salt, Sugar, and Fat by Michael Moss, and other research that's coming out that important people, far more important than me, are doing. But personally, and for the students here, I did realize there was a moment I had to stop lying to the world completely and write this down, especially not just to the world, as if I'm that important, but to the people I love and the people who respect me, look up to me, want to be me. And I had a friend who actually became very obese in the time that our careers intersected when we met in the 20 years that we knew each other. We both were in TV, both blonde, both really good reporters. I would argue she's a better one. And she just became very, 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 very obese. And I confronted her about it. And I did it because I love her. And I was really worried about her health. And she started talking about her problem with food. And I couldn't believe how similar it was to mine. And yet we were in such different places. And I told her she ought to write it down. She ought to write a book. And she challenged me to write a book. And we both thought, oh my God, we need to write this book together. So she joined me in this journey because there were so many similarities. We were stunned, actually, at the parallels. When I was going to Price Chopper, those years at Williams, she was in Binghamton, New York, just starting out her journalism career. And my daughter's calling me. Do you like my phone? It's a Samsung. She was just starting her journalism career, and she too would go to Price Chopper and do the same thing. I was also stunned at the discrimination out there against people who struggle with their weight, people who struggle with obesity. Our paths were so different. And I believe they were different for one reason, that I decided to make it look easy and hide all the struggle, and she gave in and became obese. And when we wrote this book together, she told me I had to get therapy. And I told her she had to lose weight. She did. She lost 100 pounds by the time the book was done. And I got therapy. And when I talked to this woman about what I had, oh my God, it was so annoying. It really, therapy at first is very annoying, and then it's the most important thing you'll ever do. So you got to get past the first part where you're either really nervous about it or you're really annoyed by it. I was annoyed. Because she told me that I had all these eating disorders, blah, blah, blah. And then I told her I was 118 pounds, 5'6", and this is what I eat. And I laid it out for her. I had my food plan, and there was enough food. And she's like, yes, but you're orthorexic. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And she goes, you eat too well. I'm like, really? There is now a name for eating too well? Are you kidding me? I have another one? It's too much control, and it's like the exercise. And I mean, and my daughter is actually going through this right now, just starting. But I had been orthorexic for most of this last final phase of my issues, which I believe last forever, like an alcoholic. A doctor I'm working with to help my family is telling me it can be fixed. So if that's true, and you're involved with anything like this, you need to fix it. I worked really, really, really hard with her. And I am now 140 pounds, and if you can believe it, I think this is fat. So I'm not well yet, because this isn't. See, the two sides of my brain. I tweet it often, my weight, to remind myself that I have to stick to this. I can't go down to 118. I can't go down to 125. And I sort of used my own public humiliation to get there. That's how, but it's that necessary to get the truth out. These secrets are strange. I have a daughter who I'm struggling with right now, who I'm telling you you don't even know when you're not telling yourself the truth. And that's very hard to turn around. So for me, ultimate honesty, which maybe is TMI for some people. My parents probably were like, thank you for writing that book. But they're from Eastern Europe, and they're very private. And I've lived a public life. And so now I believe it's important to live an honest life. And I forced myself to get help. My friend forced me to, in order to write the book. And sort of end this tyranny of needing to be thin and to act like it's easy. If this is you, in any way, shape, or form, and this behavior in any way is you, all I can say is please don't let it take 30 years. Don't waste your life fixated on these issues, because it took up so much of my brain. I probably could have been president or something, more than I am now, because I'm telling you, 2/3 of my brain was fixated on food for most of my life, during some of the most incredible moments of my life. And that's embarrassing for me to say. It's embarrassing to talk about how I desperately needed my clothing to be a size 2. It's really sad, and it's hard to look back on a life lived that way. So you can't let this be your journey. You should fix it now. Don't throw away or throw up your health. Please, I'm begging you, and your teeth will turn brown, okay? Your hair will get thin, your teeth will turn brown. Don't do it. And for me, I just ask that you try and help a friend, intervene, say the uncomfortable thing, have the conversation, because a real friend does that. A real friend doesn't worry if they like you at the moment. They want you to live. And if it's you, challenge yourself, as I challenged mine. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions if you want. Do we want to do questions, Russ? We have time for questions? If you have any, ask me anything. Oh, right here. Yep.
Thank you so much for coming. Susan Carmani, I'm Associate Dean over at the law school here. And I just have a question, specific advice you would have, because you touched on it at the end, and then just another specific question about your case. And that is, around the university, I see students whom, just by observation, I'm concerned about, but I really don't know them. And then inside the school, I will see specific students that I I sense there's a problem. There can be
Yeah.
food around, and then you see all of a sudden some students gravitating to the food and getting inordinate amounts. Pockets are full and things
Yeah.
like that. And so how do we approach individuals whom we don't know that well? And I guess maybe through try to find out who their friends are. Secondly, I'd like to get your perspective on many times when you were talking about these moments, you talked about how tired you were. And there is a link between sleep and eating. And I was curious if you've had some adjustments on that. It's hard for you to get up at 3 in the morning to be on the TV, but you're whether you're going to be focused on sleep in particular.
Sleep is a huge component to getting better when you suffer from a disorder like this. And sleep is my constant problem because of my schedule. And I've always worked overnights or mornings. And I had a couple of years at CBS where I wasn't. So it's hard for me to know where one challenge ends and the other begins. But I know that if you have an eating disorder, your sleep is disrupted, you're hungry all the time. You have to eat, okay? And you just have to eat the meal. You don't have to hide it later. And when you're hiding food and hoarding it and putting it places, you're already playing tricks on yourself. And if you see someone doing that, what's wrong with saying, are you playing some tricks on yourself there with the food? Can I help you? Can we talk? You can try. I would say it to any young woman I saw that I identified anything I was doing. I would just go right up and say it. Joe says I'm a little awkward, like I'm a little blunt, and he's sometimes like, "Don't do that," but I do. What's the harm? You can get pushed away, but maybe 2 weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, maybe a year later, it'll sink in, and the person you will have been part of the process. If it's someone you love, you have to have an intervention. You have to talk. And you have to say, I love you, and I see that this is happening, and I think you're lying to yourself, and you might not even know it, but you're lying to me.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey. I'm Deborah Kirch, a psychologist here with the Department of Psychiatry. Could you tell us about how your recovery has affected your relationships, how getting honest has affected relationships?
My relationships are so much better. And everybody should go talk to someone, by the way. I used to think that was kind of like, and now I realize it is the key to looking at yourself from the outside is sometimes just talking to someone. And then if they have really great advice, it's a double win. But as a mother, I feel like my relationships with my daughters, which are complicated. I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. She's almost 16. They're so much better. I look like, when I have a little roll around over my jeans, I look like their mom, finally, instead of like them, which is good for them. It's okay. In fact, they find me much more comforting. I used to be like, we would wear the same jeans, They don't like that. They don't like that. They would take all my jeans. So it's better. It's so much better. And, my husband's happy for me. And I feel present. I feel like I'm a part of this world. And that I'm not hiding this thing. And I used to grab my sides all the time and feel this and be like, I got to get rid of that. I was always harping on it in my mind. I was always owned by it. I feel very free. And it sounds silly, but it's not. It's strange. This can kill you. This can kill you. And if it doesn't kill you, it will ruin your life. It will make what appears to be a very happy life a very hollow, insensitive, empty experience.
Hi, my name's Quincy. I'm a freshman here at the university. Thank you so much for coming and speaking to us. I've dealt with a lot of the issues that you have when you talked about the fast food addiction.
Yeah.
And you touched on a little bit about how it was like alcoholism and how explaining that to people is I used to go to McDonald's 3 or 4 times a day.
Oh, my God.
I was over 300 pounds. And now I kind of do the same thing. When you talked about the running, like going out and running a lot, I do that. Same exact thing. And my problem is that the thinking, you kind of touched on it, how you're constantly thinking about food. Did you ever get over that? And if so, how did you move past constantly thinking about food? Because even now that I'm healthier,
You still do.
it's still a thing.
Well,
you know?
it's still a thing for me.
Yeah.
It's still a thing for me, but you can. Were you really over 300 pounds?
Yeah, I was around 325 to 350 pounds.
Do you have are you serious?
Yeah, now I weigh around 170 pounds. So,
How did you do that?
well, I got a calorie counting app, and I started calorie counting. I got on an elliptical for 2 months, and then I joined my high school track team spring of my senior year, and I started running. And the first day I ran, I couldn't walk downstairs for a week, but now I run every day. So
That's amazing. That's incredible. By the way, that's like if you can do that, you can do anything. You must.
thank you.
Wow. In terms of how do you stop the brain? Well, now I'm thinking about food. You know, for me, it's waves. I can get myself distracted from it. And I think the key is to distract yourself as much as possible. That's one sort of little tool. Be busy, do great things, have great relationships, and keep on the go. But also remember to have your meals, because if you have good meals, and Dr. Oz says to have little ones through the day, you know, there's lots of, but don't be hungry, because that will trigger the brain to keep doing that even when you've eaten. So you've got to, it's a fine balance, and you've got to find your own place with that. I do think about it a lot, and there are times I have to use every ounce of restraint in me, and I fall off the wagon, as Orange County proves. But it doesn't, I don't think it goes away. Now, I'm meeting with a specialist tomorrow who says this can be fixed. So I'm still on a journey, to be honest, and I don't have a perfect answer for you on that. I still, like, I can remember that Big Mac taste right now. Yeah. It's addictive, I'm telling you. And I'm actually dead serious about that, and I think that's why the brain doesn't stop, is that we have substances in the food, especially the fast food that we've eaten, that have given us a memory that it's an addiction. It forces us to want it again and again and again and not be able to stop when we're eating it, like those fries. And the problem is those substances are pervading a lot more of our food. So, constant battle, keep yourself busy, and be proud of what you've done. Any more questions? One here.
Thanks again for coming to GW today. I was curious what you think the role of the media has in both promoting these disordered eating patterns and promoting treatment of the disordered eating patterns.
So, I actually just had a great idea. Okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to make this happen. First of all, the media is terrible and blah, blah, blah. Everyone's really skinny and, you know, the whole thing. We've been following this for decades. The ideal of a woman in a magazine is not the real beauty that we each have. And that's the pressure on us, and I got the pressure from working. But just from working in television. But this idea is so good. So they're trying to use media to promote young people to sign up for Obamacare. And I was actually talking with some people from the White House about how to help them get the message out. And I said, you ought to put it in Scandal and in Girls as part of the, just in the background, you know, not the storyline. I think that unless, do you guys watch Girls? Does anybody on Girls have an eating disorder? They need to get one. I'm serious. It needs to be in the storyline because the media can do a lot by making this part of what we face. It's such a good idea, isn't it? Because it's true. The one thing that's not true about that show, and God, please tell me there are other things that aren't true. Do you all walk around naked? Like, seriously. I don't think you do. I mean, but that is such a good idea. We have got to mainstream the concept that we 1 out of 5, 1 out of 3, all of us suffer from these disorders at some point. And I'm going to make that happen. Okay, there was one more question. I've got to write that down.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm a freshman. There is an eating disorder plot on Glee, but
Is there?
but it lasted a week and then she was over it. So I didn't find that to be my experience. But,
Oh my God.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm a freshman. I'm involved with GW Speak. And I've been in recovery for 2 years. I've been symptom-free for 2 years, and I'm happy to say that I have a healthy relationship with food. I don't find myself addicted to food, so I just wanted to share that a little
That's
bit of
great.
hope for that. Yeah.
And how did you first realize you had a problem?
Oh Lord, I mean, it's sort of a genetic thing in my experience, and I had a sister who had it, and I was trying to help her while still keeping secrets,
Oh, my
like you
God.
said. And eventually I just realized, I think it's hard to remember. It was a couple years ago, but, I just sort of, I broke down. I couldn't take it anymore. Like, mentally, it was just too much.
Too much.
Yeah. So I went to treatment. But I wanted to say, while my relationship with food and all that is good, I get so pissed off when people talk about dieting.
Yes.
And when people without eating disorders talk
Yes.
about diets and the C word, calories.
Yes.
That.
Yes.
Like, I
It's
hate that
effed
word.
up.
And like, and so I just, I think about this sometimes. I want everyone to love themselves and to have a healthy relationship with food, but I don't come from an experience of obesity, and I just was curious about how you see the approach to fixing the obesity problem and the eating disorder problem, and where the overlap is, and where there's sort of different language, different conversations that have to go on there.
Oh, well, I think the obesity problem and the eating disorder problems intersect more than we could ever imagine. In my book, I was stunned at the parallels. But it's how we talk to each other. And it's how we get this into the national conversation, like the girls' idea. We've got to talk about this like it's not just a few people who kind of are strange. It's all of us. All of us have a bad relationship with food right now. Basically, if you go to the grocery store, you have a bad relationship with food. You know why? Because the food's bad. So we're all in the same boat. And there's so many different components to this. Obesity is one, and eating disorders are the other end of the spectrum physically. But our health care and how much it costs us, and that is quite obviously the scales, are tipped against us because we're paying for all of this. And especially the obesity crisis is leading to all sorts of other health problems, but so too does the eating disorders. So we just have to talk. We have to tweet. We have to talk. We have to bring people together. I do believe there needs to be a national program that really gets the conversation going around the country. And I think the ideas start here. And I think I'm being wrapped. Usually Joe interrupts me. But I'll take it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So while we're asking our panelists to here, asking our panelists to come up, we have two sort of tokens of our appreciation. Both, we hope, symbolic in many ways. First, we have a Morning Joe set piece.
Awesome.
That we hope will find this display, and I do hope
I will put it on tomorrow morning.
that the national call to action and a national commission centered around much of what you heard today can really have its beginnings here, because we know the importance and the magnitude, and I think we got an amazing sort of roadmap to that. And then second, we have what I believe is really a vase of the most beautiful flowers that we could ever imagine, at least if not always on Mika's desk in her mind, because today's theme is more than a body, celebrate you. And I think you heard today that this is all about celebrating you, for you. And we celebrate you for your courage and for your candor, and really for your words that give us all hope, that we're at the beginning, the end of the beginning, or hopefully the beginning of the end, and we've got a great roadmap here. So.
Thank you so
you.
much. I love it. I love it.
Let me get one picture over here. Photographer, right there. Yes, gotcha. Perfect. And so can we ask the panelists to come up and start to assemble And if I might, since I've got the mic, and I guess I hooked you so I can keep talking here, I just, in a moment of personal sort of privilege, for me, I just hope everyone today and anyone listening on the World Wide Web or that will listen in the future will think of this for their own personal circumstance. If you're a father and you have the viewpoint of a child in need or in help, please have the conversation. If you're a friend, please understand that 10 to 15%, I believe, of all Americans suffer in one form or fashion from an eating disorder. And if you don't believe it, try it. Share a story. Say something to one of your friends. You'll be amazed. They'll say, oh, my sister, my brother, my dad, my best friend, my boyfriend, my ex-husband, my current wife, etc. You will find are suffering in ways that you cannot understand. And so the point of that is you're not alone. We're at the beginning of this road. Awareness can lead to prevention. Prevention can lead to really great science. And the best of all is that at early ages, we are starting to really understand that certain parts of our brain get triggered in ways that we don't have to happen. So this is an exciting day and an exciting conversation. So thank you for getting it going.
So